We are talking about insurance today. And when I announced this, I said, we are reviewing your property and casualty insurance policies. And I had a little note there at the bottom, you can barely see it. It says, yep, you got to do it. So what we're learning is, sometimes we just set these things, set it and forget it. But there are times when we need to look at these things again. And today, we have me. I'm the marketing manager and credit counselor for personal money planning. And then Michelle Kuhner, our president, is here.
Sorry.
She's got a lot of initials after her name, and she's going to be leading this discussion. So go ahead.
I will give you the privilege of reading this quote that I told you I love so much, because that was kind of a cute one.
So I was looking for quotes about insurance, and this one came up. It says, "The first time I was paparazzi'd, I thought I was being investigated for an insurance claim." And that's from actress Portia de Rossi. And I just thought that was kind of funny. It's like, what do we think about insurance? It's, are we doing it right? Are we getting covered? And so I just thought that was a cute little quote.
And why do we get insurance? I mean, that's one of the basic things that we should look at first, is what is it that we're really using insurance for? And that's to cover something. We have stuff, we have things. We want to protect our things. We want to make sure that if something happens to our thing, that we can either have it repaired or replaced, or, we want to make sure our stuff is protected. And the level of protection we expect, is that something that, we want to insure everything? I mean, I really like this pen. It's one of my favorites. But let's face it, pens go missing a lot. If you're, well, maybe not so much now that we're working from home. I mean, it limits the theft of the pen, but I really like this pen. But would I insure it? I mean, it's not super expensive. The frequency of loss is pretty high compared to other things. So I probably wouldn't want to do that. But on my house, that's something that would have a much, higher expense. And for whether it's a repair or replacement. And also it's not something that happens frequently. So that's what we look at, is if it's something that's frequent or infrequent, and the level of expense that is, and whether it makes sense for us to, purchase insurance on something. I know one of the big ones, and I don't know the phone coverage. Where is my phone? Phone coverage. Or if you have an electronic, a TV, do people still do DVD players?
Yeah, we have.
I know on my TV in the back, it's built in. So it's like a DVD player built into the TV, which it's an older one too, but now you just kind of stream it, see, and so today we're going to be looking at a couple different things. One is property and casualty, and that covers not only your house, but your automobile and some other things. So when we look at some of the basic concepts that are included in, home insurance or property insurance, we look at the dwelling, other structures, personal property, and liability. And so, Tina, can you describe what each of those means? Or what?
So, which ones do you want me to describe?
Well, it's basically an insurance is made up for housing. It's made up of 4 different areas. But usually there's dwelling, there's other structures, personal property, and liability.
Okay, so gotcha. All right, so your personal property is for all the jewelry and things that you have, all your jewels, and your liability is if somebody takes a crazy jump off your
the roof into the swimming pool.
Yeah, rope into the swimming pool. You got to cover that. The dwelling is the structure itself, right? And there was one more that I'm forgetting.
It's other structures, and that could be a structure that you have, like a shed or a greenhouse or something like that. So that's right. When we look at dwelling, it's the actual house itself. Other structures are still on the property, but maybe like a greenhouse, a shed, a shop, something like that. Personal property is all the belongings inside of that structure. And then the liability is anyone else that may get injured on your property that as well. And one of the things that when we look at this is adequate coverage. So of our house, do we have adequate coverage? And that depends. I mean, it depends on what you have in your house. They have some basic coverages, like if your house is worth this value, then this is about how much, personal property you would have in it. You can increase those, you can add riders. But what we do look at, and the insurance company is really interested in particularly if you have a mortgage on it, is covering the actual dwelling. And so they want to make sure the house is okay. They aren't so concerned about your TV and your electronics and your jewels, as Tina mentioned, but they want to make sure that the actual property is, if you're a mortgage company, you want to make sure that the house is there. And so they do usually suggest and highly recommend 80% of the home's value is covered. And so that's something that, you need to make sure of if you're adequately covered, and is what you're also any type of improvements that you're making. If you've put, like I mentioned, a greenhouse or built a nice shop out back that you're going to, use as a workshop, does that increase the value of your property? And if it does, you need to make sure that the insurance company knows about that. Even if it was a DIY project, they need to know about that, because if that, got caught fire, got blown away with a tornado, you want to have that replaced. And so you want to make sure that that is also included. Also inform your insurance company if you've had any other improvements, like it's like an alarm system. You can get discounts for those types of things. Alarm systems, smoke alarm systems, carbon monoxide, all of those things that, and particularly if it's monitored by, like a service. And so that's something to really look into. One thing that is confusing on some of the property insurance, particularly for dwelling, is water damage. And this was something I wanted Jared to kind of go into and talk about a little bit more. But when we think water, it's not just all water damage is covered. You can have, there's flooding, so there's flood insurance, and there's water damage insurance. So if your washing machine hose goes out, or your dishwashing hose goes out and causes water damage, typically that's going to be covered. But if you have any type of, let's say, drainage backup or anything like that, is not necessarily going to be covered. So that is something you want to review. And I don't know if everyone got these little checklists. I think we sent those out on the newsletter. These have some really great things to look at and let you go through and check them off to make sure that you've talked to your insurance agent about some of these things. Another thing to consider is what if you don't own? What if you're renting? Is there something out there to protect the contents? Because let's face it, if you're renting an apartment or renting a house, you're not so concerned with the actual dwelling or maybe other structures, but you want to make sure your property inside of it is protected. And there are renters insurance policies out there. And actually those are fairly reasonable. My son's apartment, they had the people above them, their washer went out, or a hose went out, and it went right over the bed. And he had, those foam beds, the memory foam bed. And so that just soaked up the water. It was hard to dry that out. And it ruined the bed frame. And so his renter's insurance, I think he paid maybe like $50 a month for it. It covered all of that, all of his property. So it is definitely worth looking into if you are a renter. And let's face it, electronics are expensive. If you have a nice TV and, furniture and things like that, it can really add up. And so having any type of damage like that, it's definitely worth the investment to have renter's insurance. The next one is automobile insurance. Tina, do you maybe just take a guess? And this shows me if anyone really knows. Do you know what the minimum amounts are in taxes that you have to carry on your auto insurance? Does anyone know?
Used used to be, I don't know today. Yeah, I think it used to be 25, uh, 50 and 15 or some combination of that, but I'm open to listening.
I said 15,000. I wasn't sure.
And actually, it's not far off. Right now, the minimums in taxes is what we call this 30, 60, 25. And what that breaks down is it's 30,000 per person if there's a medical injury, 60,000 per accident, and for a vehicle or for the vehicle damage, 25,000 total per accident. So I think, Walter, I've mentioned this a couple of times because I like to reference examples. I've been in 2 car wrecks this year, neither of them my fault, by the way. And but one of them, I did have some medical issues. And I ended up getting whiplash. I banged up my wrist, my knee, and from someone rear-ending me. And whenever I went to the hospital, I mean, let's face it, to walk into the emergency room, you're throwing down, almost $1,000. That's just for them to say hello, welcome. And so that, along with the MRIs and CTs and X-rays and braces and medication, all that kind of stuff, we were looking at upwards of 15,000 before we even did any type of physical therapy. And if you're taking that 50 or that 30,000 limit and saying that this is the minimum and just that one part was $15,000, imagine if I had to have surgery, if I had to have a hospital stay, any other type of recovery, then that could have wiped out that 30,000 really quickly. And if you wipe that out, you're responsible for it. And so if I injured someone driving, then I would be responsible for anything above and beyond that limit. And so it's important, particularly if you have, teenage drivers, also on that 25 that I mentioned at the end, that's $25 or $25. You can wipe that out very quickly. $25,000 worth of vehicle damage. And that, although mine came nowhere near that, the damage that I had, I went looking and truck shopping with my son earlier this year too. And there was one that was really pretty. And I said, oh my gosh, look at this one. And he wanted a Chevy 4-wheel drive. And we looked at it and it was $89,000 for a vehicle. And it just shocked me that, I mean, this was a truck. It didn't have a hovercraft built into it. It wasn't a Tesla. I mean, it was a truck. And so to see the prices on that, if someone had done, if you were in an accident with one of these high priced cars or trucks, and it was more than $25,000 worth of damage, you're on the hook for that as well.
And all you got to do is total one of those trucks you just talked about.
Yeah, exactly. And so that may be something if you have a higher, and that is that you do have considerably, higher limits than what the basics are. So there are some other things that we're going to look at, like an umbrella policy that may, instead of increasing each individual policy you have, which is the housing and the vehicles and stuff, that you may be able to have this umbrella to cover you as well. So, to make sure that you have everything covered, you obviously want to make sure the adequate coverage on limits, but you also want to make sure you kind of know what stuff you have. And taking an inventory is a really great way to look at that. I mean, we've been talking about over the last few months about taking inventory of our financial lives when it comes to spending plans or, estate planning or even debt management. So why would this be any different? Why would insurance planning be any different? And it's right. Well, it's not.
Looking at what you have as far as your, your what's in your bank account, what you're starting with is the same as what's in your, what's in your home, and what you have as your that adds up to your personal value, your net worth and everything. I know it, when I think of inventory, I used to work in inventory management in a past life, and we used to say, to make sure that people would, it was a manufacturing place, so we were trying to get people to only grab the materials that were needed to make the certain things, and just grab what you need and keep track of it, because we would say that is your bank. That's just like your bank, and so it's kind of like your home is your bank. So you need to make sure you know what's in there, and like we said, we're talking about what needs to be covered.
And this can be a little bit daunting for some people. If I said, okay, here's a piece of paper, go through your house and list out everything you have. And in addition to that, we need the value. We also want the serial numbers, maybe the models, makes and models, all these types of things. And oh, by the way, when did you buy it? Do you have the receipt? And that's people are going to check out. And so there are ways that you can do that make it a little bit easier. One of the things that I ended up doing, which I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to this, so, it's maybe a little overkill for some, but I went through and I had taken photos of, the TV that I had. I also took the serial number on the back. So I had a photo of that. And then I made a blog. And so I'd uploaded all of that information and I made it as a private blog. So it wasn't available to everyone unless someone's really good at hacking. And so I had all of that listed. And so if anything ever happened, I could access that and see make, model, serial number. I could have even done a video of things, which is a really easy way of doing it, Lori. But the easiest one is to just walk through your house and take a video. I know when my brother had a burglary at his house, and for some reason they took a lot of DVDs, and he had this wall unit that had, every new DVD, this was years ago, but every new DVD he would have to go get. So there were many hundreds of DVDs. And when they said, well, which ones in particular were stolen? And he's like, I have no idea. Do you see this entire wall? There's, to figure out what was done and how many were missing. It took him quite a while. And he, even just to see, it's obvious a TV is gone, but it's other things. Do you know what's in your closet? Do you know what's in your drawer? There were other things that they weren't sure of that could have gone missing. Now, I'm not saying to put on your inventory. I have 4 white T-shirts, or anything like that, but anything that's going to be of value, whether it's a jacket or, a leather jacket, that's worth something. It's more than a Hanes T-shirt and a pair of socks or something. So anything that you may want to have replaced. I don't know if any of y'all have, I have a KitchenAid mixer. If that went missing, I would definitely know, because I have almost every attachment other than the ice cream maker part. I have almost every attachment that goes on there, and I use it all the time. So
you left out the best part, the ice cream maker part.
I want to come over when all the noodles are getting ready for from the pasta maker.
I know. I haven't used a couple of them, but I do roll my own lasagna noodles. It's really cool because you can make sure that, you don't have all the preservatives in them. So it's kind of neat. Yeah. I'm kind of a weird person when it comes to that stuff. That's my I guess my downfall there, that I like all the gadgets. So
I bought some gadgets in the past couple months as well that I really like. My thing that blends and cooks at the same time.
yeah.
And so I can make soups. And that one I don't know if that would be something that I would. Yeah, it was kind of pricey, and a new pan. But my spiralizer wasn't that expensive, and I just love it. So sentimental value.
Now, actual cost value and replacement value. I think this is one of those things that people often get some of these mixed up. Anyone want to take a stab at what those mean? I'll give you a hint. Actual cost value incorporates depreciation. So whereas the replacement cost value is saying, okay, here's your pen that went missing. We are going to pay to replace this pen. This pen costs $10. We're going to give you $10. Whereas on the actual cost value, it's saying that, well, you bought this pen 2 years ago. you've gotten this amount of use out of it. So we're going to depreciate it this amount. So that's when we're looking at actual cost value. So make sure on your policies, that you're getting what you're expecting. And if you're not sure what that is, look at it and discuss that with your insurance agent, because that can make a big difference. There are some other policies. Walter, this is one that I've mentioned, when you said that you have on your auto policy, like that $100,000 worth of vehicle repair coverage. Anytime you want to increase, instead of looking at your home value policy increasing, your insurance value or your car policy increasing, you can do one that's called the umbrella policy. And so as long as you have whatever minimum they have set, and that may be more than what the minimum for your particular state is, they'll say instead of the 30, 60, 25, and I have no idea but let's say that it's 35, 65, 30. So let's say that that's the limit that they've put on, then you have to at least meet that limit to then have an umbrella policy. And I will tell you, umbrella policies are like super cheap. It's definitely worth looking into. I mean, you can get $1 million worth of coverage for like $350 a year.
Yeah, I've had umbrella policies for years and years, and I also make sure my daughter has a umbrella policy also. But it is amazing how inexpensive the umbrella policy is.
Exactly. So instead of increasing your homeowner's insurance and your automobile insurance to what you think may be needed, it may be cheaper, instead of increasing both of those policies, to just increase it to what they require and then add this umbrella policy over top of it. So you just have to run the numbers to see, but that's it usually pans out that is a more economical way of going with it. So umbrella policies are really good. Has anyone heard of identity theft policies?
I get requests from my credit cards and stuff, saying, oh, sign up for this, but I don't know if that's really a policy or if that's just coverage for that card.
It depends. They do have some like LifeLock that are supposed to, basically you have that option of getting a coverage. So if there is any identity theft or any, cards opened up in your name or loans taken out, then they will go back and basically help get all of that sorted out for you. But identity and financial theft are two kind of different things. With identity theft, it's saying, okay, yeah, your identity's stolen, it's being used. And then you have this other part over here too, that is, the actual debt, like the actual financial theft.
Let me tell you the thing that I am worried about, and that is giving out all my information to a company that wants to protect me against identity theft or cover all my credit cards. And so I'm just real hesitant, and I know it's probably out there anyway, but I'm really hesitant to give them my social security number, every credit card number that I have, things like that. I'm a little leery of that.
You are correct in saying that. You are also correct with saying that you're concerned. You're also correct in saying that it's already out there. I can assure you that it is. Because I was at a cybersecurity conference in Dallas, I guess it was about 2 years ago, and they had a hacker that this is what he did for a living. I mean, he didn't have a job. This was his job. He would hack and steal money. And this guy was brilliant. I was like, if he had just put his superpowers to good use. But he had mentioned, what they do is that they don't just go after and say, I'm going to hack Walter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hack him. I'm going to steal all of his, his money out of the bank account. What they end up doing is they'll look at your good credit. They will add themselves as an authorized user. establish, because by adding in themselves as an authorized user, that is now they get to kind of piggyback on your good credit score and your good credit history. So they've now established some type of credit. And what they would do is they'll make this basically fake name, or buy a, on the dark web, they'll get a social security number of someone, and someone that's not really doing a lot. Think of like my grandmother. She didn't go buy a whole lot of stuff. She had her one credit card. And so she didn't have a lot of high-end activity on her report. And I can assure you, she did not use the internet. So there was absolutely no way she knew to monitor her credit history. So they would hijack someone like this. And then they would file under, like, either piggyback on them, or they would create this false identity that didn't exist, didn't have a credit report. They would apply for something knowing that it would be denied. And then that established that person. Then they would come back, use that person's identity, piggyback on you, Walter, say that they're an authorized user, get the credit report rating high enough to apply for that card, and then get it approved. Then they would send stuff to this address. They weren't at the address, but they had eyesight of the address, would go by, pick up whatever items that there were. And these were usually computers and high-end electronics. And then they would turn around and say they never got them, and they would get the refund on it. And so they would buy it, get the refund, have it, sell it. This guy was brilliant. It's like, how can you do that? How did you come up with that? That took a lot of work, a lot of thought. I was shocked. But that's when we talk about identity theft. You may not even know that someone's at it. And then as soon as it's done, they'll remove it. And if they're good enough to hack in to do that, nowadays, a lot of these things will have what we call third-party authorizations or one-time passwords, what we call OTPs. And so anytime you log into something, it'll send you like this code to your text or an email, or call you, or have you download. I know on our VPN, we download an app, and anytime someone tries to log in as me, then I will get a notification and I have to approve that login. And a lot of authentication apps will do something like that, to where you can, you have control over that. But these people are smart. And so whether we're talking about financial theft or we're talking about actual just identity theft, you may not know. But one thing he was pretty adamant about is it's out there and it's cheap to buy. So protecting yourself, having some type of insurance policy to help with these types of things is important. Now, before you buy a policy like this, like Tina mentioned, she gets some with her credit cards and stuff. Look at what you're actually purchasing, because sometimes these programs will say, okay, they don't actually help go fight all of this stuff for you. They're not like, we're going to send the paperwork and we're going to do all of this for you and we're going to make all the contacts. They'll say, okay, you have been breached your identity. Here's a packet of stuff. Well, I could have done another way you can protect yourself with some of this is you can contact the credit bureaus. And I wouldn't necessarily put a freeze, but you can like do a monitor alert. And for anything that, that any, I guess, possibility of someone accessing your credit report, anytime anyone pulls it, then you would be notified and you would have to provide like this super secret password or something. So that's something that you can do as well.
I have that and it's through my credit cards, but it's a separate entity, but it's free because I have the credit card, and I have it in a couple different places. So I can go on there every once in a while and just look to see if anybody's, looked up my credit score and see, or, my credit information, just to see if it's something that I, was expecting or anything like looks fishy. And I also get the reports when my email or any information has been found on the dark web, which just means I always have to change my passwords.
And
so
I have
change your passwords all the time.
Yeah, that is something that is important, is changing passwords all the time. And I have something very similar. It's through McAfee, but a lot of these programs have it. But it's like total protection, and it's for like 5 devices, and it will check. And whenever I get updates all the time where it says this particular website was compromised, whether my information or not was on there or was one of the cherry picked ones, they'll still say this was compromised, and change your password. And so it does that. It's running in the background all the time. And I've gotten a few also where, I mean, I can't even remember. I had, what was the one before Facebook? Do you remember, Tina? MySpace. I was like, I can't even remember that. It was like so many emails ago. I mean, it just feels like forever. And so, yeah, I had one on there that came up as my MySpace. I'm like, I have no idea how to even log into that. So I feel like I'm pretty safe with that, but it'll also pop up and say like you've been searched, or and I have a Google alert too. Gary and I have these on ourselves that if anyone searches us too, like if I'm just like saying who's someone in town that I can maybe target, anytime your name is searched, you can be notified as well through Google alerts. So just anything you can do to like make it harder for them. They want easy stuff. And I've even seen a lot where they've stolen social security numbers from children. So this is not something just you, once you reach 18 or older, that you need to be concerned about. It's also others, children that have gotten to a certain age, and then they pull a credit report at, 18, and they're like, wait, what is all of this stuff? And now they have to fight and prove that, this isn't them. And it can take a while to get all of that done. Another type of insurance issue you may experience is if you have business. If you have a business, or you own a business, or you're a partner in a business, these may be things like errors and omissions insurance. We call it E&O. If something goes wrong, it's if you're a doctor, malpractice. These are the types of insurance coverages you may want to look at and make sure that your policies are pretty good.
The policies that you usually get when you first buy a house to cover all of the appliances like that, like
homeowners warranty type of thing.
Yeah, because I know like when I had mine, when I first moved into this house, and when I had a condo in Phoenix, it was the same kind of thing. I really used it a lot in the first couple of years, and then I canceled it, because then it was like, okay, now it's not going to make any sense. So I guess that's one of the things you just kind of have to, again, weigh the.
Yeah, I think weighing the odds on it, and not just the odds, but, like you said, peace of mind. And maybe that peace of mind, instead of having that insurance policy, is having enough set aside that if this big thing goes wrong, then I can use this pot of money over here. And
Right.
So basically you're kind of your own insurance then, because you're
Right.
going to be able to cover it. So, and
Right,
if you
that goes
don't
back
have
to
to
our-
cover it, then you have that to use for something else as well.
Goes
So
back to our emergency fund
mhm.
recordings and things like that. I just wanted to mention that the email did not include this. I just went back to the email, and apparently the link is broken. I say click here, and there's no here to click to. So I will definitely send this out as a response, the checklist for property and casualty insurance.
Yeah, and I think the homeowners, like you mentioned, the homeowner's warranty. I've heard a lot of people. I've heard both. I've seen both ends of the spectrum on this. You used it, and that was really great that you got value out of it. And I've seen some people that have it and have had, and I think it depends on who the carrier is, but they've had terrible experiences. They're like, I bought this thinking it would cover, this or that. And then they come out and basically put a Band-Aid on it. And then they have to, it's something that they're constantly having to do instead of actually replacing something or repairing it. Of the root cause, or finding out the root cause of the issue and repairing that. So just know what's actually covered in those things. And I think that's what's the important thing to look at, is what is actually being covered. What is it that you're, is what is being covered, is that matching your expectation? And I think that that's the big thing. And look at, you may have to look at some of these, these, I guess, levels of things. Is increasing your insurance, whether it's on the home or renters or automobile, is that something that you want to do? I mean, you may be able to, can you afford that? Or is it something that maybe that you need to increase that, but you really don't have enough you don't want to throw more at that dollar amount per month premium? Maybe, by increasing the limit and maybe also increasing your deductible a little bit, maybe that kind of levels it out too. So the insurance agent should be able to tell if you say, this is how much I want to spend a month, what is it that you can do? And how can we make these happen to make sure that I am covered on this? They may suggest another combination of policies. So it's important to look at that.
All right.
We do offer our financial coaching classes. We are doing this. Actually, we're doing this with a couple of businesses now. We've had one business here in town that's offering it to their employees and make sure that they have some financial wellness in their lives to alleviate stress. Financial issues is one of the largest causes of marital discord, of stress, of anxiety. So if you can get this in order, a lot of areas in your life are a lot easier to deal with. Roth and traditional IRAs is what we're going to be talking about next. Let's see, it's going to not be 2 weeks. It's going to be 3 weeks. Is that right, Tina?
I think the dates are on the next slide.
It's going to be December 2nd. We figured we would let you spend time with your family for Thanksgiving and not have to attend class. But we are going to come back on the 2nd and do the Roths and traditional IRAs, talk about the differences between them, see which ones make more sense. We'll also be looking at some backdoor Roths, Roth conversions, all those types of fun things. And the 16th of December, we'll kind of start looking at some of those year-end considerations that you may want to kind of flip through and see if any of them affect you. And then on the end of the year, we're going to look at what documents do you need to keep on file and what can you go ahead and throw into the fireplace. So we have some good information coming up. We hope that you'll join us. These are fun for us. So this actually gives us a reason to talk about this stuff versus us just like making people listen to us. I kind of joke that like during the holidays, I talk about this stuff all the time. So it's like, did you update your will and can you pass the mashed potatoes? Although we have had to go through a lot of this stuff. And speaking of inventory and getting your financial life in order, I lost my uncle about a month ago. And, but when we were going through his stuff to deal with his estate stuff, oh my gosh, I wish he had listened more. I think he just heard the pass the mashed potatoes part. But it was his stuff we're really having to sort through it. And it's not, I know it's hard on us to do this type of stuff and to get, to kind of face our own mortality, but it is such, we know what we want to do. We have it in our mind, we have it mapped out, but we can't, unless we share that with our family. They are put into so much anxiety and stress if something happens to you because they're trying to figure out what you would have wanted and how to do what you would have wanted. And it causes a lot more stress and anxiety on them. If it's down on paper, you alleviate all of that.
All right.
All right. Do we have any questions that we might be able to answer? We still have a few minutes. All right. Then we will definitely see you next time.
Thank y'all very, very much.
You're so welcome.
Glad you